What's up, everyone? Beast Mode back here with another video. So I apologize in advance. I'm a little under the weather with a cold, but gotta get the content out for everybody. So today I'm gonna do a tier list. A lot of people had suggested that I do one. I was kind of on the fence because everybody's been doing one, but today I want to make a tier list of what I think the best decks will be moving forward, as in the next maybe 3-4 months or so. Because if we look back at what decks have done prior, we all come up with pretty much the same tier list. So I think this is a good way of kind of look at where the metagame is going or what I think the metagame's going. This is all a matter of my opinion. Most of this will probably be wrong, but we all have an opinion. If you feel a deck's better or worse, that's fine. You can make your own tier list. But so today, I am a pretty competitive player in terms of, I top a lot of events. So I think I have a decent idea of what decks are decent and what decks are good and what decks might be just bad. So let's start off here. So S tier is a deck that top pretty much every event. You'll see them in every event. Nobody's surprised. It's kind of like Black Wings. Like when you see a Black Wing that tops in the event, you just scroll right by because you know it's just a Black Wing deck, and they all look very similar, and they seem to top every event. A tier is a deck that I think tops probably pretty frequently, probably once, maybe every other event. One you might see one or two in one particular event top, but then you don't see them again for a little bit. All decent decks. They can beat S tier decks as well. B tier decks are probably the one that you see top every one, like once every 3 tournaments or so. Kind of get excited when you see a list because it's usually something fresh. It's not the same old top decks in the top 8 or top cut. Example of a B tier deck would probably be like last year Quick Draw, top like 3 times maybe by 3 different players, but it was very infrequent. C tier deck is a deck that might top once a season. An example would probably be like the Amaryllis Burn deck. We saw it once, never topped again. The deck, can it top? Sure, it has topped, but are you really expecting one? No. Usually, when you hear one of these C tier decks top, everybody kind of goes in there, and that's like mostly the most downloaded deck of the tournament typically because it's usually something new and fresh. And then D tier decks are just decks that just won't top. I don't think they're very good, and I don't think even with bracket luck or the right player that you'll see them top. So let's start off with I'll grab Gladiator Beast here. Gladiator Beast is a C tier deck. I cannot stomach the deck, but people either love it or hate it. I don't think it's a very good deck, but it's one of those decks that just get rolling and just end up beating you, even if even if you might be playing a better deck that day. It's just how the deck works. I do think that you can see one of these top once every 3 or 4 tournaments. You might see one or two in a top cut throughout the whole season. I'd say it's probably the better of the C tier decks right now. Obviously, it's the only deck we have in there, so we'll keep it at the top. Amaryllis Burn, also another C tier deck. I think Cowpath is the only person ever top with this event. Yeah, I think he's only top one event with the deck. So, is anybody like crazy surprised if you see one? No, but it can top. I think maybe once or twice a season is probably realistic for the deck like that. Let's get into this. Is like straight hero beat. This is a B tier deck. This is the deck that plays like Skill Drain, Royal Oppression. It's not very exciting. Its best monster is a 1900 vanilla, and you hope that you have a Gemini Spark with it. The reason why it's good is because it's pretty much anti-meta. If you draw the skill drains or the Royal Oppressions, and at the right time you can just blow anybody out. But this is a deck that you might see top once every few events, depending on the event. I know there was one Deck Devastator tournament where there was like 2 or 3 of these that made the top cut. It was a Swiss tournament, I think. So definitely no one's like crazy surprised to see this in the top cut, but it doesn't happen that often. This Gigaplant deck, I don't think is anything, but I haven't really played enough of it. It's a D tier deck, I would say right now. I don't think enough players are really trying to play the deck. Some people think that it's great and has potential. I haven't played enough. I really can't say. No, maybe I'll have to reevaluate if I start seeing some more play with it. But right now I'm gonna put it in the D tier. I just don't think we'll see a top with it. Hasn't topped yet. I don't think that'll change this season or over the next few months. Synchrocrat, C tier deck. I do think that this deck is good enough to top an event. I don't know if we've actually seen one since 2010, actually during the actual Edison tournament, but this deck does win a lot of locals. I know I've seen videos on YouTube. Excuse me. Has topped some events and in paper, so I do think that it probably can top in person, online rather, as well. So we'll put it in C tier. X Sabers. Do I think that we'll see an X Saber top? I do think we'll see an X Saber top probably this year. It came very close at one of the Swiss tournaments. I think there was a couple in the running. The deck is inconsistent. That's probably its biggest issue. The combo that it has is crazy. You can loop somebody's whole hand, but it's not easy to do. But I do think that it's possible that this deck tops an event this season. So I'll put it in C tier. I think it's probably it's something like this. Let's see here. I don't even know what this is supposed to be. This is trash. We throw that there. That's like zombie beatdown. That's not doing anything. This fish deck, that doesn't even exist. This deck hasn't done anything since I've been playing. I've been playing for the past year. I haven't seen it do anything. I don't think it will. I think we've kind of, I think the metagame has just shifted and people have figured this stuff out. Gadgets, I think is a C tier deck. I do think the gadgets could top an event, like straight gadgets with either 9 gadgets or 6 gadgets in Machina with fissures, smashing ground, all that. Could you see one in a year? I think so, possibly. I think that this deck might be on the rise a little bit, so we'll see if one of these tops an event this year. Excuse me. Let's see, Liceworn. I think straight Liceworn is probably just a B tier deck at this point. Do I think it can still top? Yes. Do I think that we'll see one top this season? Yes. I don't think we'll see it at top as much as it did last year because I just don't think it's as good as the Christiasworn deck. I don't know why you'd want to play straight Liceworn when you can just play Christiasworn because I think that deck's just better. It's more consistent. It has better. The power play is better. The Christie is better. You don't have to play Wolf, which is just a bad card. And but I still think the deck is able to do what it's always done, and that's mill a bunch of good cards, draw a bunch of good cards, and win. So I don't think that's changed. C tier, I would think that this Machina deck, this is not the Machina deck, sorry, the Gear Town deck. It actually won a Beast Mode Circuit Series. It was like, there was 16 players, single elimination. I think it won like 3 or 4 rounds. But it had a lot of Machina stuff in it too that just carried it as well. I think this deck is probably good enough to top an event this season. But I just think that the Machina hamster build there, the like +1 deck is just better. So I would put that in C tier. I think it has a better chance of topping something than these decks do. Gravekeepers, trash. Don't think it's very good. I think it has topped some paper events, but I don't suspect that we'd see this card top. Just, yeah, this deck rather. Let's see here. Let's grab Chainburn. Trash, not interactive, kind of toxic. Nobody really wants to play against it. Hasn't done anything. I don't think it will do anything. Too many cards just stop it. And if you sign up and try to play this deck, you're probably going to win a round or two. And I think that there's enough sideboard with Decrees and Dust Tornadoes that you probably won't have a good tournament experience. This here, Christiasworn. I think this card is, or this deck is a S tier deck at this point. It's better than regular Liceworn. It's more consistent than regular Liceworn. It has better cards than regular Liceworn. I just think that this is the better Liceworn build at this time. Everything that you mill is just kind of works with each other. You know, you're milling Liceworn names, you're milling fairies, you have Christias, you have Soul Impurity Lights. The biggest strength to the deck right now is the fact that I think frogs are becoming extremely popular, and this deck actually has a really good matchup against frogs, just because of Christia, number one, and number two, how fast it is. So the Christiasworn deck can just drop a bunch of guys and put pressure on the frog player really quickly. And surprisingly enough, I know a lot of frog players do play Vanity's Fiend, which stops special summons, but they're in control of that in that situation. Whereas if you have a Christia on the board, that deck really, the frog deck specifically, has a tough time playing. So I do think Christiasworn is probably going to stop topping more events just because the deck's more popular now. People are playing it more. And B, I do think that there's going to be a lot more frogs, and this is one of the better counters to the deck, in my opinion. We have Flamevell. I think Flamevell are a... let's come back to Flamevell. This here, I don't know what this is. That's D tier. That's like a hero, dark hero calling deck. I don't think that's going to top anything. This here is Dragon Turbo. I think this is a B tier deck. I think the deck can top events. We'll probably see one top every once out of every 3 events or something like that. The deck mainly loses to itself just due to bricking and inconsistency, but otherwise when it's drawing and playing, it's the best deck of the format. It literally sets up an unbreakable board and can do it turn 1 or turn 2 rather. So I do think that this is a B tier deck, probably better than Hero Beat. I think it's probably better than Liceworn 2 at this point, so I'd range it like that. Let's see here. Let's grab Fairies. Fairies, I think, is an S tier deck at this point. It is especially the Carpath build, I think, is more resilient to the Light Imprisoning Mirror, which everybody was side decking. Carpath was main decking the Royal Decree. Also plays Caius in the main board with the Battle Faders. So it can out the Light Imprisoning Mirror pretty easily. Yeah, and Royal Decree obviously is just a really good card when everybody's playing a bunch of traps. So I think that both Fairy decks are really good. I probably would prefer the Chaos build a little bit more just because of the fact that you don't want to just lose to a Light Imprisoning Mirror. But even the regular Fairy deck or their side, I can Breaker, the Magical Warrior, and all that just to out the Light Imprisoning Mirror. So Fairies also has a really good matchup against the Blackwing player. It's just generally good, but a lot of people believe it's a very difficult deck to play. But it definitely does beat Blackwing if you can get rolling. So I definitely put that in S tier. Let's see here. This is Flamevale Zombies. I think this is probably a B tier deck. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it top a tournament or two this year. Yeah, I'd say B tier. Probably put it towards the end. I just don't think it's as good as regular Diva Zombies. I know it did win a Beast Mode Circuit Series 16-person tournament. I think that there's probably potential with the deck. I think I like this Flamevale build better than the Well build, which I also would put as a B tier. The deck may top a couple tournaments this year because people are like determined to have it do something. I've tried everything I can. I just don't know if it's good enough to overcome Diva. I definitely say is not good enough to overcome Diva, but I do think it's likely to top. It's probably more likely to see one top. I think I'd put it more in C tier. Same thing with the Flamevilles here. I think that this is probably more likely. Let's put them towards the top. I think that it would probably be like a one top and done type deal with these decks. I think last season, Welladad topped once. Flameville Zombie, they haven't topped at all. So I would say probably a 1 or 2 top this whole season. So I put them at the top of C tier, actually, looking at it now. Fire Dog, same thing. I think that that's like I do like Flameville. I've been trying to make decks work. Been talking to Souls Manic, who is probably the best Flamevale player. He's probably the only deck he pretty much plays. I think this deck is probably good enough to top more events, but I don't think enough people play it. So right now, I would say maybe 1 or 2 throughout the whole season is probably where I would leave this. Maybe just 1. So I put it in C tier. Let's see here. This deck here, the Dragon Disaster Dragon deck, I think is an A tier deck. I actually think it's better than Dragon Turbo because they both have the same high, like the ceiling with Future Fusion is just through the roof with both of these decks. Obviously, Dragon Turbo is a little bit more like you can just really OTK. But when they both draw Future Fusion, it's pretty hard to beat either of them. And I think that this deck has a little bit better mid-range game where you can just kind of draw the Recruiter Dragon there and just kind of play a slower game with the trap cards and everything. But this deck is getting more popular. I do think it's an A tier deck. I think you will see more of these regularly topping events. So I'll put that in A tier there. Let's see here. My favorite decks, Quick Draw. I think Quick Draws are probably a B tier deck. I think we'll see them top as much as they did last year. Maybe every 2 or 3 events, you might see one sneak into the top. I like the old school Hamster Titanium build. Others believe the Rocket's better. I think they're both about the same. It's whatever you want to play. I think that they're probably better than some of these other decks here. I think if Frogs become extremely popular, I think that Quick Draw has a good matchup against them, just because you can drop Turbo Warrior and the Drill Warrior and tack through Dupe Block. Also, it's pretty good against Fairies, so there's a possibility that these decks could maybe we put them up at the top of B tier. They could be working their way into A tier, and we could start seeing them top a little bit more regularly. But right now, I feel confident putting them in the B tier, just based on I've been playing the deck, I've been trying a lot. So we'll see. I might be back on Quick Draw before you know it. It is my favorite deck, and I was one of the few players that actually top with it. So we'll see. This KFC build, I think, is a C tier deck. I don't even think it's topped an event yet, but I do think it can. It's good enough to definitely top something. I think it's probably the better of the C tier decks, to be honest. I think it just needs the right player playing it, probably Carpath again. And I do think that we could see this top once or twice this season. Let's grab Vayu. Vayu is an A tier deck in my opinion, and I know that's going to upset some people. For a long time, this deck was an S tier deck. It was definitely one of the top 3 decks of the format. Right now, what it does not excite many people. The deck is just not that thrilling. all you do is bring a 2300 beater from the graveyard, and it plays a lot of the same cards as a lot of the other decks, like the Raikou, the Hamster, and I feel like the other decks just do it better. Specifically the Machina deck. I don't know. It's difficult. I don't think the deck really beats Frog Monarch at all, or the Diva Frog, or any of the Frog decks. The reason why the deck is even really good is because of the fact that you can main deck Oppression and not be bothered by it at all. Like, doesn't hurt your deck whatsoever. I do think that there's a potential for Vayu to actually make its way back into S tier if Frogs are as popular as I think they will be. Because this is the best deck Devastation Virus deck in my opinion. You can do it turn 1. You can summon a Grefford, send all the material, and set a deck Devastation Virus, and then flip it in your opponent's draw phase. And that card literally destroys Frogs. And they can't even My Body as a shield if you do it turn 1, because they have to have an actual Frog on the field to protect. So if Frogs are as popular as I think they will be, so we might have to move this to the top of A tier. I think that this deck can move its way back up, and it could just be, main decking deck Devastation Viruses is where I think it might go. It definitely side decks them already, so we'll have to see. But this deck doesn't really do anything too exciting anymore. I just don't feel like its power plays are all that great. I think a lot of other players are starting to feel the same way about it. It really hasn't done a whole lot. I know it did it was in the finals of the Beast Mode Circuit Series, but it just got destroyed in the finals. It got 2-0'd so quickly by Frogs. It wasn't even really competitive. So anyway, that's what I think about that. Let's see here. Diva Frogs. I think Diva Frogs are the best deck of the format. We're going to put that here. So, yes, that's going to be the big surprise of the tier list, I guess. I think that Frogs are becoming increasingly popular. They do not require a high skill level to play at basic levels. Okay, I understand that there are high level Frog players that do play the deck much better than others. For the longest time, there's been just probably a handful of Frog players. It's either you love the deck or you hate the deck, and there are 5 to 10 players that just love the deck and they play it, and they've been really doing the best with the deck. Every event, they're kind of always in the mix, and I think people are realizing that that's going on right now, and they're like, well, if these players are always having this much success with the deck, why don't I play it, right? And that's what it is. Players play the best decks, and it's a copycat type thing. It's been like that way for years. We always net deck the best decks and play the best decks. So I think that Diva Hero is positioned. Diva Hero, Junk Hero, those two decks play very similar in my opinion. You can argue which one's better. I'm sure the Frog players themselves probably have their opinions, but I think these two decks are the best deck of the format. I think that over the next 3 to 4 months, it's going to be a Frog metagame. I suspect, until people figure out a way, or maybe value players start main decking deck Devastation Virus and to try to keep these decks at bay. They have too much resilience. Now, this is not the Frog decks that we saw back in March of last year, where the Hero Frog deck was kind of the first one that came out of nowhere. They've evolved. They've gotten better, more consistent. They have more power plays. Their side decks are even more fine-tuned. It's very difficult to sideboard against this deck. I do think it's the best deck of the format. That, and I will say we'll do that now. Black Wings. Let's just move it over. Black Wings has been S tier, the best deck of the format forever. I do think it's very, very close with Frogs. I think that the Frog matchup is probably favored for Black Wings, I would say, just because they play. If you read Blackwing cards, they don't even sound like they're from 2010. They just play really good cards. Icarus Attack can out the Duplock pretty easily. They have Whirlwind. And now if we think Edison format is really what makes Edison format so fun, because it's very interactive, right? It's +1 -1. Most of the cards trade for a 1-for-1. It feels thrilling when you do get the +1 off of on a heavy or a Mirror Force or maybe a Torrential or whatever. And so that's what the format's really is. It's very grindy. These decks up here, these two decks specifically, don't play fair. Okay, Frogs do not try to grind. They outgrind you just because of the way the mechanics work. They summon a Monarch every turn, they get a +1. You can't compete with that. There's very few decks down here that just get a +1 every turn aside from Gadgets, and their +1 is not very good. It's trash. So Frogs, they have like a cheat code almost built in. Every card they summon is a +1. They summon a Diva, it's a +1. They summon a Junk Synchron, +1. Every Monarch is a +1. They do block you, so you can't attack them. They get to play a load of unfair cards. And then you have Blackwing, the other deck that is playing the most unfair cards, right? And they can play Whirlwind. So they can summon a Blackwing every turn and get a +1. They could have 2 Whirlwind and get a +2. They play monsters that have effects that are crazy, and their trap lineup with Icarus is a broken card. So this deck is the only other deck that plays unfair cards with frogs. So that's why I definitely think that these two are still the best decks of the format. Most people would say Blackwings are better. I'm making a prediction. I'm saying frogs are going to be the best deck now moving forward. So we'll have to see what happens. But that's my little rant about the Blackwing frog choices here. So let's see here. Diva Hero. I actually think Diva Hero is an A tier deck still. I know it has fallen out of favor for a little while, and I think that this deck is probably underplayed. Is really the reason why. The deck is extremely explosive, and my teammate has been playing it a lot. It plays a lot like Diva Zombies, but the Diva Zombies, you don't have to play the recruiters. Like they don't play recruiters, so because that's slow. And if you're playing setting recruiters against a Monarch deck, they're just gonna keep looping you, and you don't get to do anything. This deck here doesn't need them. You just summon Grepper, and you're pitching a bunch of stuff, and you can like OTK second turn with this deck. So this deck is fast enough to beat the Frog deck, which I think is important. It's also fast enough to beat some of the Christius Warren decks if they don't open bananas. So I think this deck is probably A tier. I do think that we'll see one top more frequently than it has. That's just my little prediction. Let's see here. Diva Zombie. So this deck here was considered S tier for a long time, but I am now moving it down to A tier. Okay, I play zombies, and I play them routinely. I played them for the last 6 months. I've taught many events with them. The deck is great. I just don't think it's positioned that well right now. Just because of frogs, and I understand people disagree with me, but I just don't see, and I have not been able to experience that that zombies beat frogs. It just doesn't happen. The win percentage is extremely low. There are chances you can OTK and steal games if they don't have the right cards, but in Book of Life, removing frogs, Treeborn frogs in the graveyard is just not enough, and I know people believe that, but it's not. The deck does not need Treeborn Frog to exist. They have come a long way from the reliance of Treeborn Frog. I will tell you that. If you watch the Beast Mode Circuit series, the match with Xeris, who is one of the best zombie players of the format, played against Karina, who ended up winning the tournament. It wasn't even fair. It looked like the zombie player just didn't have a chance from the beginning. I think he got 2-0'd. So obviously that's one instance, right? We can't make a whole, can't say everything is based on that one game, but I played the deck for a long enough time. And also another thing to point out is that most of the tops of this deck's had over the past year has really come from 2 to 3 players. So if you look at all the top, of course, the other players have top of the deck. I'm not saying they haven't. I'm saying a majority of the tops come from Silchus Ruin, myself, and Xeris has a few tops as well. So there's 2 to 3 players that just keep topping with the deck every event, and it's one of the most represented decks in every tournament, and it still seems to be the same players topping. So I'm not saying that the deck isn't good. I'm saying as the players might be playing the deck well. Maybe they're getting bracket luck. I know I haven't been playing a lot of frogs in my tournament, so that's definitely helping me. But in terms of where I think this deck is now, I definitely think it's the best deck of A tier. I think it's still borderline, but before people would always say that's definitely an S tier deck. But I do think it's fallen down a little bit. Can't really beat Christia. It has a tough time with fairies because DD Warrior Ladies just remove everything. This Machina deck is another problem for it too, which we'll talk about because they main deck the Warrior Ladies. This Dragon deck main decks Warrior Ladies. I don't think zombies are in the greatest spot at all. So I put them at the top of S tier. We have Diva Frogs. Diva Frogs. So this was like the original like first Diva Frog deck, and everyone kind of put it on the map. I think this deck is just not as good as the Hero Frog. I don't think the Hero Frog is as good as Diva Frog or Junk Frog, in my opinion. And I don't play frogs, so take it with a grain of salt. But just looking at the cards that are in the deck, they play Miracle Fusions, they play Heroes. Those are a little bit more inconsistent. You have to draw certain cards. The deck probably has a lot more potential to brick. I would say it's probably in this region here. It can definitely still beat zombies, but I just think zombies will still top more events. I don't know. I'd probably put it around here somewhere like this. I think it's probably fine somewhere around here. I think we're just nitpicking if we're trying to move a spot here or there. But I think that if you're going to play frogs, and this is just coming from someone who doesn't play the decks, I would probably say these two are better, but I don't know. I'm sure people will argue that. Diva Hero Beat is a tier deck. The deck plays, I think it's just better than Hero Beat because you have the options to play Miracle Fusions. You do a lot of the same things. You have the same Alias 1900 beater with Gemini Spark, which is essentially this Hero Beat's power play. I do think that this deck is probably better. I do think regular Absolute Zero Diva Hero is better than that deck, than the Hero Beat, Diva Hero Beat. So if I was to pick one, I'd probably just play the deck with like the Caius and the old school, maybe Snowman and all that. I'd probably play that. Machina deck here. Let's do that one at the end. Let's do the Blackwing hybrid. I think that it's probably very close to regular Blackwing. If you talk to some of the better players, I think Cameron and Randage, I think, are on regular Blackwing if I remember correctly. But I think it was a big hype for the hybrid, and now I think we're kind of swapping over to a straight Blackwing because I just think it's more consistent and better. I'm not a Blackwing player. I don't know. I just think from what I've seen in the chat and all that. But I think both of them are probably S tier. You can see either of these just top events always. And this Machina deck is probably the one I have the hardest time placing. I think that this is absolutely a real deck, and I think that this deck is going to be taking spots in top cuts more frequently. And it plays like Quick Draw used to play. Like, you know, obviously it doesn't have Dandelions and stuff like that, but it plays the Raikos, it plays the Kais, it plays the Hamsters, it plays Pot of Avarice. It does a lot of milling. It tries to grind you out. It tries to mill a bunch of cards and then activate Fortress from the graveyard, make you waste resources, and then Pot of Avarice everything back in. It does play some DD Warrior Lady as well. I think that this deck is probably an A tier deck. I don't know if it's better than Zombies, and I'm not sure if Zombies have a great matchup against it. I haven't played enough of the matchup. I think it's probably an A tier deck. I do expect that we're going to see it top more events this season. So yeah, and I definitely think it's a real deck. So this here is my tier list for the next 3 to 4 months. Obviously, this is a matter of opinion, and please comment below and let me know what you think. But I definitely think right now that Frogs are going to be the best deck for the next 3 to 4 months. You heard it here first. Blackwing is going to continue to top, and I think Fairies is definitely a top tier deck, definitely S tier. And this Christia Sworn deck, I think, is borderline. I think that this deck could be put into the A tier, but depending on how, if Frogs become as popular as they do, I think that this deck just naturally has to become better and more popular, just because I think that this is a really good counter to the deck. So anyway, this weekend, Friday, we're going to, well, Saturday is the RBET. It was postponed, so it's going to be this Saturday. So Friday night, we're not going to host a tournament because we just had a big 50-player tournament last weekend, and we're not going to host a tournament before the RBET. There's too much Yu-Gi-Oh! That weekend. I am going to stream and hang out and play with people. If you guys want to come chill and hang out Friday night, that's fine. And we will resume the Beast Mode Circus Series, the 16-person tournaments next Friday. We're looking to see if we can maybe throw a bigger tournament down the road. It was a pretty fun time. We had 50 players recently, so that was a pretty good sized event. So please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.